are live, potentially, I think. That shows we're live. Is it showing we're live down here? Yes, no, maybe so. So far it is. Fantastic. Do we have audio? Yes, it is. Let me go ahead and go here and add us some no copyright lo-fi beats in the back, just something to give some ambience to everything, you know? So give me one sec. There we go, right here should be perfect. Give it a second to load. Hopefully it'll load. Perfect. All right, so that should be everything. We should be all set and good. I'm going to go ahead. Just make sure everything is still good. Yes, indeed. Right now, everything is looking good. Sounding good too, I hope. We're about to be ready to go live. What's up, guys? How are we all doing this evening? Putting the finishing touches on everything before we go live. Well, we are live, but I'm getting everything set up, and so it's really just getting everything set up fully before we go live, you know. So let's give it a sec. So we can go ahead and get this party started. All right. So when we're looking at this, we're really talking about how slow YouTube is being right now. Pop out chat. Yes, that's what I wanted to do. Perfect. So I can bring that down here. Fantastic. Perfect. Okay. Amazing. That's what I wanted to do. That's phenomenal. Okay. Let me just broadcast this out that we are live. And we're ready to rock and roll. Finally. Hello, Sterling. Welcome to the stream. Glad you're here, sir. Who wins PA? You will have to watch and find out my prediction, sir. Sterling, if you wouldn't mind, could you just let me know how's the audio sound? How's the everything sound? Is everything sounding good? Looking good? I would appreciate insight on that, my friends. That would be greatly appreciated. Let me make sure this is playing. Perfect. So we got the audio. Should have music playing. Finishing up posting. So give me 1 second. We'll be ready to roll. Look good with the map. Audio good. Look good with the map. Thank you, Sterling. I appreciate it. Phenomenal. Let me just post this and we'll be ready to get started. Don't hear music. Well, I just started the music. Apparently it wasn't playing a second ago, so give it 1 sec. The music might start playing again here in a sec. As long as everything is working, we should be good to go. If it's still not playing, I might turn it up and see if you can hear it then. So let me try turning it up. How about now, Sterling? Can you hear it now? Just turned it up a little bit. Can you hear it now? On my side, it shows it's playing. So I just want to make sure that it's playing and you're able to hear it. If it's not, okay, fantastic, and it's not drowning out the audio or anything. Want to make sure that it's not blowing out me. It's in a good balance. So let me know if it's in a good balance or not. Fantastic. Thank you, Sterling. I appreciate it. I think we are finally ready to go ahead and get started. Hello, everyone. Welcome to week number 2 of the 2024 election analysis. We are now 3 weeks away from Election Day, and it's so crazy that it's coming so quick. We're going to do one of these every week until Election Day. We did one last week. We're doing this one this week, and we'll do one next week and the day before Election Day. It's going to be really fun and really exciting. How this is going to work is we're going to kind of go through the night. So as the polls close in different states, we're going to stop and analyze those states. We're not going to analyze all the states, mainly just the battlegrounds and some of the more interesting states to look at, but we're going to do it in order of poll closings by the end of the night. We'll talk about why I think some states will go one way, some states will go the other, and hopefully have some fun. If you guys do have any questions, feel free to ask them in the chat. And without further ado, let's go ahead and get started. So, kicking it off at the first poll closings will be at the following time. It will be at 6 o'clock p.m. Eastern, and it is going to be Kentucky and Indiana. Kentucky and Indiana are going to be those first poll closings. And so Kentucky and Indiana, 11 electoral votes. No real surprises here. They are both going to go for Donald Trump. The first states on the map will both be called for President Trump. Kentucky and Indiana, 2 of the reddest states in the country. And there's not going to be really any difference in that this time around. I mean, just for reference, in the 2020 election, Trump won Indiana by 16 points. He won Kentucky by 25.9. And in 2016, he won Indiana by 19.2 and Kentucky by 29.8. So President Trump is the safe favorite to win both Indiana and Kentucky. And so we're not going to foresee any changes there. The next poll closings will be at 7 p.m. Eastern. Why exactly do Kentucky and Indiana poll close earlier than other East Coast states? Sterling, that is an excellent question, one of which I am not certain of. I don't know why certain states close their polls earlier or later than others. Some of it may factor in the time zones. I'm not sure. Different states have different voting laws and such, but I do not know for certain. Following up at the 7 o'clock p.m. Eastern poll closings, we have the eastern coast of Florida, Georgia, the rest of Indiana and Kentucky, because some of them are in the central time zone, so those close at 7 p.m. Central. South Carolina, Virginia, and Vermont. So to highlight, the states that do close at this time are Florida, Georgia, Indiana, the rest of Indiana, Kentucky, South Carolina, Virginia, and Vermont. Kicking it off Vermont is going to go for Vice President Kamala Harris by a very comfortable margin, her first 3 electoral votes of the evening. Those, without a doubt, are going to be a safe pickup for Vice President Harris. And same with South Carolina. South Carolina is going to be a safe pickup for President Trump. For everybody's reference, in 2020, President Biden won Vermont by 35.4 points. Hillary Clinton won Vermont by 26 points. And then in 2016, President Trump won South Carolina by 14.3 points and by 11.7 points, respectively. So both states are going to be safe for their respective parties. We don't expect any of that to change. Now, starting with Virginia. Virginia is probably going to be closer than a lot of people think. There's a lot of data. There's a lot of talk coming out of the state of the early vote and how well Republicans are performing in the early vote. For historical reference, in 2020, President Biden won Virginia by 10 points. Hillary Clinton won Virginia by 5 points. If we look at my handy dandy election data spreadsheet that I have over here, this is my little pride and joy that I've created, analyzing a lot of the interesting states in this election. On this day in 2016, the polling average had Hillary Clinton at 8.4. There was a 3-point shift towards President Trump from on this day polling to the final result. In 2020, President Biden was up by 11. There was a 1.6 point shift between that and the final result. So if this polling underestimation of Donald Trump continues, we're looking at Kamala Harris winning actually somewhere right between where Hillary Clinton and Joe Biden were. She would win actually by a closer margin than she would win by a narrower margin than Kamala Harris did, or Hillary Clinton did rather. Current average has her up by 6.4, but if you approximate a roughly 2.3% polling average, you would look at potentially her winning by about 4. It's going to be close, probably similar to Hillary Clinton margins. Current polling supports that. And for that reason, I think that it'll be a narrow lean for Vice President Harris, 13 electoral votes in Virginia. Although there may be talk about a potential flip of Virginia, it will probably not materialize this cycle, however cool that may be. If Virginia flips Republican in this cycle, it would be an early night, because if that trend carries across the rest of the country, it would be quite surprising. Moving on, the next state we're going to talk about in this batch is Florida, with its 30 electoral votes. Used to be the key battleground state. I mean, if we go all the way back to 2000, where George W. Bush won it by 0.0009% of the vote, to winning it by 5. Obama won it by 2.8 and 0.88 respectively. And then Donald Trump won it by 1.2, grew on that margin and won it by 3.4. So Florida has been the quintessential battleground state. However, it has trended massively to the right over the last 8 years. Current polling, for your reference, on this day, current polling in Florida has President Trump up by 6 on this day, which would be the best that he has ever performed in the state of Florida. Current polling, for your reference, on this day in 2016, Hillary Clinton was up by 3.4. Joe Biden was up by 2.7. And so all of that together gives us a shift between that and the final result of about 0.35%, which would... Oh, that's the wrong state. There was about, on this day in 2016, Hillary Clinton was up by 3.4. Joe Biden was up by 2.7 in 2020. All that together gives us a shifted average of about 6 points even. And so you're looking at a shifted average of about 5.3. Donald Trump's already up by 6 in the Real Clear Politics polling average, which would give him a shifted average of 11.3. I don't think it'll necessarily be this high. I think Trump's potentially on pace for a very high result in Florida, but it'll probably be closer to probably between a 6 and an 8 point margin, which puts Florida at likely for President Trump. All the polling, all of the data, all the trends support Florida, once a battleground state, now pretty solidly a Republican state. That's going to give President Trump 30 more electoral votes. And then moving on to the quintessential battleground state of this cycle, it is the state of Georgia. State of Georgia has been a historically Republican state. I mean, we have to go all the way back to 1992 with Bill Clinton as the last time that Georgia went Democrat before 2020. Between 1992 and 2020, it was a solid Republican state. And then in 2020, President Biden did win it by 0.24%, the narrowest margin of victory of any state in the 2020 election. Before that, President Trump did win Georgia by 5.1 percentage points. Mainly, this is due in part to really good turnout. What happened here? Where did the map go? Hello? Where did the map go? That's a little awkward. We're going to reload that page real quick. That decided not to load. Wow, we're having mega problems here with the map. There we go. Hello, we're back. Okay, cool. So President Biden did win Georgia by 0.24%. Right now, in the current Real Clear Politics polling average, we can go here. Currently, President Trump is up by 1.5 points on Vice President Biden, on Vice President Harris. On this day in 2020, on this day in 2016, President Trump was up by 5.3. On this day in 2020, President Biden was up by up by 1.2. All of that together gives us a shifted average of about 0.35%. Which added on top of our current polling average gives us a 1.85% win for Trump, which would put it in the tilt Republican category. I do want to jump over here real quick to Cook Political Report's demographic swingometer, which is a really nifty tool if you want to kind of look and see how different things would break down and affect the race. One of the things that you're going to hear me talk about throughout the night, especially as we talk about these battleground states, is going to be the trends in how some of these different demographic groups switch. So current polling data would suggest that President Trump is going to make gains in the white non-college graduate voting bloc. That voting bloc you can see by here, especially in the state of Georgia, but we are going to go back to nationally real quick. That voting bloc nationally went for President Trump 62 to 36. Some of that white college or non-college educated group is union voters and some people that voted for Joe Biden, especially up in the Rust Belt. But I would expect President Trump to make some inroads in the white non-college graduates. In the same vein, I anticipate Vice President Harris making some gains in white college graduates. That group is a little bit more liberal. Biden won at 54 to 44. I wouldn't be surprised if that's maybe 56-42, something like that. Expect President Trump to also make gains in the African American and the Latino communities, respectively. He's been making a big push for some of those minority communities. And the polling right now, some of the polling that has come out suggests that he is making some pretty nice gains compared to other Republicans historically. So if we go to Georgia, this is what I want to talk about. So if we go to Georgia, 66% of white non-college grads voted in 2020. They broke 79 to 20 for President Trump. We can assume potentially maybe that they may shift over to maybe 80%. We can see already that flips the state to Trump. If we assume maybe that white non-college graduates break just a little bit for Vice President Harris, just by a few percentage points, that should stay. It's 49.2 to 49.6 right now. But if we say President Trump makes a marginal gain in the African American communities, bumps him up from maybe 6% to maybe closer to 9%. Not a lot in the grand scheme of things, but you see that already does propel him 50.6 to 48.2 over Vice President Harris. And ultimately, this is going to be kind of what I see over the course of the election, which is Trump makes gains in some places where he lost. And Vice President Harris is simply not as popular as Joe Biden in a lot of these circles, in a lot of these groups. So you're going to see Trump gain in some of those. And for those reasons, I think that the state of Georgia will be the first flip of the night. and it will go for President Trump. It's 16 electoral votes returning to the President Trump's column, and that puts us at 74-16 through the first round of voting, or for the first two poll closures. Our next poll closing time will be at 7:30 p.m. Eastern time, and these are the states of North Carolina. Do you think turnout is going to look more like 2016 than 2020? Given all the mail-in ballots from 2020, I'd imagine a change in turnout would change depending on the demographics. Sterling, I agree. I think that we're going to see maybe something in the middle. I know that just across the board from the different states that have already started their mail-in ballots and have already been putting those out, that there has been a noticeable decrease in the amount of mail-in ballot requests compared to 2020. 2020, you have to factor in, the coronavirus, COVID-19, all of the craziness that was going on in that cycle. We're not experiencing a lot of that right now. So just on kind of what's available right now from the data tells us that there's not going to be as many people voting by mail, which is a definite plus. We want more people voting in person. But to a degree, it will be difficult to predict. And so some of that we'll have to wait and see what happens on actual election day. But the data right now suggests that it's going to be a more in-person, more early vote / in-person election than a mail-in election, which is always a win in my opinion. So jumping into the 7:30 p.m. poll closings, we have North Carolina, West Virginia, and Ohio. So those three states, we're going to go ahead and go from top to bottom. We'll start with West Virginia. It's the most Republican state in the union. It's the reddest state in the union. For your reference, in 2020, President Trump won it by 38.9 points, and in 2016, he won it by 42.2 points. So President Trump, barring just an absolute collapse, will win the state of West Virginia, and it's 4 electoral votes. Moving on to the state of Ohio, a historic bellwether state. No Republican has won the White House without Ohio, and up until the 2020 election, you didn't win the White House without Ohio. Ohio was the ultimate bellwether state. I mean, we can go back all the way to, how far back can we go? When we go all the way back to, if we go all the way back to 1960, 1960 would actually be the last time that a Republican won the state of Ohio and did not win the presidency until Donald Trump in 2020. But, I mean, if we just go back to 2000, red, red, blue, blue, red, red. President Trump won it by 8 points in 2020. He won it by 8.1 points. So he consistently sits at about 8 points in Ohio. Used to be a bellwether, but now trends massively red. If we look at the current polling average in the state of Ohio, we haven't gotten a lot of polling out of Ohio right now, but President Trump right now has a 7.4% lead in the polling. That's about where that's a little under where his final results are. On this day in 2016, President Trump was up by 1.8 points. Or actually, Hillary Clinton was up by 1.8 points. Let me fix that here on my spreadsheet, change that from red to blue. And then it was a 9.9 shift since President Trump won it by 8.10. Joe Biden was actually up by 0.6%. President Trump won it by 8.2. So again, an 8.8 shift. So a 9.35% shift overall. You add that on to the current polling average of 7.4. You're looking at President Trump winning Ohio by an insane 16.75%. That is probably not going to happen. It'll be probably closer to 8 to 10 points, probably keeping in line with the current, with his trend, probably a little bit more. Again, you'll probably see him continue to build on the white working class vote, get some of that inner city Cleveland and Cincinnati vote, and build upon the margins he already has. Again, Kamala is not going to be as popular as Joe Biden, and so you'll see Trump make some gains in that as well. For those reasons, Ohio is a safe Republican state. It's 17 electoral votes. Barring something completely unexpected, will go for President Trump, and he'll hold Ohio for the 3rd straight election. Moving on to the state of North Carolina, it's been one of the tightest states in the last few cycles. In 2020, President Trump won it by 1.3. In 2016, he won it by 3.7. In 2012, Mitt Romney won it by 2. In 2008, Barack Obama won it by 0.33. George W. Bush then won it by 12.4 in 2004 and 12.8 in 2000, respectively. North Carolina, a mostly Republican state, historically mostly Republican state, save for one election cycle. Nonetheless, it is very, very close. If we go to the current Real Clear Politics polling average here on my spreadsheet, right over here, right now, President Trump is up in North Carolina by 0.5 percentage point. On this day in 2016, Hillary Clinton was up by 3. Joe Biden was up by 3.3 in 2020. So all of that together gives us a shifted average of roughly 5.6 percentage points, which tacked on top of our current 0.5 point lead for Trump gives him a lead of about 6.10. Now, I don't think President Trump's going to win North Carolina by 6.10 percentage points, probably closer to 2 to 4. But it's going to be potentially not as probably not going to be as close as it was in 2020. If anything, I expect things to probably kind of balance between 2016 and 2020 in a lot of these states. If we go to the demographic swingometer, I'm going to stumble over saying that, but we can probably expect President Trump to kind of carve into this ever so slightly, probably gain about 2 or 3 percentage points on that. And then Kamala Harris, again, coming with my prediction, will gain a little bit in the white college graduate vote. So we shift that over just a little bit. But then Trump only won 7% of the black vote in Charlotte in North Carolina. Let's bump that up just a little bit. Let's say he wins like 9%, maybe 10% of the black vote. Puts Trump at 50.8 to Kamala Harris's 47.5, roughly 3 percentage points, give or take. That's about kind of where I expect it. So again, North Carolina, it'll be tilt. Republicans still, because if you look on my spreadsheet, tilt is anything less than 3 percentage points. We're looking at roughly 2 to 4. So North Carolina is a safe bet to be in the tilt Republican category. Same with Georgia. Georgia should be down in tilt. Do you think there will be significant impact throughout Western North Carolina due to Helene? Could that flip the state in your opinion? Lower turnout among non-college. Again, it's possible, Sterling. Great questions, by the way. I appreciate the questions. It's possible, and it's definitely an interesting thing to think about. I know that there have been efforts made in North Carolina to ensure that the people affected by Helene are still able to vote, whether it's setting up polling stations or different things like that to ensure that they can still vote. I know that there will probably be a lot of people that are really wanting to vote and make their voices heard after getting absolutely getting their lives destroyed by a hurricane like that. And so I think that the infrastructure would have to be completely gone. And I think with the implementation of like Starlink and different things like that Elon Musk has brought in, it's going to make it pretty difficult for people to not vote. And I think that by the time we get a few weeks down the line, while things will not be, given that Trump is relying on low turnout voters, could that make the state come down to very slim margins? It's very possible, Sterling. I think Trump will run up the margins in other parts of North Carolina, again, make some inroads in the African-American communities, specifically in North Carolina. And that can potentially balance out. But we can go over a scenario where, say, Trump loses North Carolina by a slim margin, and kind of see what that does to his map. But overall, I don't think that North Carolina will flip this cycle. Again, Kamala is going to sit somewhere between Hillary and Biden. And so I think Trump will be okay in that respect. Moving on to the 8 o'clock p.m. poll closings. This is the largest swath of poll closings. This comprises, how many states is this? This comprises, I actually don't want to count. It constitutes 171 electoral votes, the largest batch of electoral votes on the night. And it is the states of Alabama, Connecticut, Delaware, Florida, the Central Time of Florida, Illinois, Kansas, the Central Time Zones of Kansas, all of Maine, Maryland, Massachusetts, the Eastern Time Zones of Michigan, Mississippi, Missouri, New Hampshire, New Jersey, North Dakota, Oklahoma. New Jersey, North Dakota, Oklahoma, Pennsylvania, Rhode Island, South Dakota, Tennessee, and the central time zones of Texas, and Washington, D.C. The largest swath of poll closings are going to be in this batch of states. And we can go ahead and we can knock out a ton of these for both candidates. So President Trump, he's going to win in North Dakota, in South Dakota, Kansas, Oklahoma, Missouri, Tennessee, Mississippi, Alabama. Vice President Kamala Harris is going to win in Connecticut, New Jersey, Delaware, Maryland, Washington, D.C., Rhode Island, Massachusetts, and Illinois for sure. In Maine, we're going to look at Maine's 2nd congressional district going for President Trump, and Maine's 1st congressional district going for Kamala Harris. Maine, like the state of Nebraska, they divide their electoral votes up by congressional districts, and so they split them up, and then you have the at-large. Maine at-large is going to be tight, but it's probably going to be won by Kamala Harris. So Kamala will win 3 of the 4 electoral votes in Maine, and that leaves 78 electoral votes outstanding between 4 states. So first one, we'll take a look at the state of New Hampshire. The state of New Hampshire, with its 4 electoral votes, has been a solidly Democratic state since, I want to say, 2004, because I believe George W. Bush did win it in 2000. It hasn't gone Republican since then. It's become close in a couple of elections. In 2016, Hillary Clinton only carried the state of New Hampshire by 0.37% of the vote, and then Joe Biden ran up on that and won it by 7.4%. Current polling has New Hampshire right now at 7.4%. And if we look at the current polling averages on this day, in 2016, Hillary Clinton was leading by 4.3. She only won it by 0.3, so a 4-point shift. Joe Biden on this day in history led it by 9.27, only won it by 7.2, so that's a 2.7 shift. Gives us about a 3.7% shift in the vote towards President Trump. So we're looking at potentially 4.37% for Vice President Harris on a shifted average. And that falls in line kind of where I think it's going to be somewhere in the middle. I think Kamala doesn't do as good as Biden. Kamala doesn't have as much appeal as Joe Biden in some of these spots, but she's going to do somewhere in between Hillary Clinton and Joe Biden. With that being said, New Hampshire is a lean Democratic state. Its 4 electoral votes give Kamala Harris 94 electoral votes. Moving on to the next most obvious state, it's going to be the state of Texas, and it's 40 electoral votes, the second biggest prize in the election. It's 40 electoral votes. Texas has been a Republican state since I've been alive, and it hasn't gone blue since 768. And so back then it was only 25 electoral votes. But President Trump won Texas by 5.6 in 2020. He won it by 9 in 2020. There's been a subtle leftward shift in the state of Texas. Current polling average right now has President Trump up by 5.7, so a little right about where he won it in 2020. Polling average on this day in 2016, it was 6.73. He won it by 9, so a 2.27 shift. On this day, it was 4.4. He won it by 5.8, so a 1.4. It gives us about a 1.84% shift. So factors in, we're looking at a 7.54% shift or polling average for Trump. Roughly that, maybe a hair higher than it might be. It'll probably be somewhere between 6 and 8 percentage points. But regardless, Texas, we're not going to spend a lot of time. Texas will be likely blue. That cracks President Trump over the 200 electoral vote threshold. Kamala Harris is still at 94, but we are going to keep trucking along and keep moving forward. Next 2 states are 2 of the biggest battleground states that are going to be in this election. It's the states of Michigan and Pennsylvania. We're going to start by looking at Michigan. In 2020, President Biden did win the state of Michigan by 2.8%. In 2016, Donald Trump won it by 2.2%, or by 0.22%. So Michigan has flipped between the last 2. Outside of that, it's been Democratic for the last few election cycles. Let's take a look. Current polling average in the Real Clear Politics polling average for the state of Michigan has Donald Trump leading 0.9%. By 0.9%. This is the last couple of days. Trump has had some very beneficial polling, and he's taken the lead in Michigan for the first time ever. He never led in 2020. He never led in 2016. This is the first time that he's led in the Real Clear Politics polling average. And this is the question, the biggest question that we're going to be looking at coming into election time, or coming into election day, is you can look at my spreadsheet, and if you look at this, at the 2016 shift section and the 2020, you see most of that is in red. Most of the time, polling has massively underestimated President Trump. It has massively underestimated the appeal that he has, and the question becomes, with President Trump performing, you can see on this day average, you can see a lot of this is in red, especially in some of the key swing states. Will this trend of underestimation in the polls continue? Will President Trump be underestimated in the polls again, or is this the pollsters trying to actually account for that? Because if there's even a 1% shift from President Trump towards President Trump from these polling averages, with how close this election already is, you're looking at President Trump essentially winning, and the same thing the other way. That's how tight this election is. But looking at the state of Michigan, on this day in 2016, Hillary Clinton was projected to win by 11.4%. Donald Trump won by 0.3. It's an 11.7 point shift. In 2020, Joe Biden was projected to win by 7.2. He won by 2.8, so 4.4. That's an 8.5 average shift, which the math here, Trump's up by 0.9. You're looking at an 8.9% shift. It's not going to be by that much. Donald Trump is not winning Michigan after losing it by 2 points. He's not winning Michigan by almost 9 percentage points. If we go into the demographic swingometer, which is probably my favorite tool, and we play our same game. So Donald Trump, especially in a state like Michigan with a lot of union voters, if we knock down the white non-college or the white non-college educated, jump that up a little bit, just that alone, move it 63-35. That alone is enough to move the needle for Trump. Keep our trend of white non-college of white college graduates voting for Harris. Bump that up a little bit. Say Harris wins at 59-39. That actually bumps it back towards Kamala. But now say that Donald Trump does make those inroads in the African American community, especially in Detroit, and we're looking at say Donald Trump wins like 12% of the black vote, 49.0 to 48.9. I mean, even a minor shift, back that way flips it to Trump. Michigan will be close. It's going to be very, very, very tight. I think right now, polling and data and trends would suggest that President Trump will narrowly carry the state of Michigan. I think Michigan is the most liberal of the three, so I think there's a case to be made that Michigan could very well go for Kamala Harris. But there is a lot of Michigan also has a high Muslim community, and they are not happy with Kamala Harris. And so looking at all of that, it is very possible that out of spite, they don't vote for Kamala Harris. And I think right now it's a safe bet to leave Michigan as a tilt Republican state. Regardless, it's going to be very close, and it'll be an interesting state to watch on election night. The final state in this swath of poll closings is the pivotal state of Pennsylvania. Pennsylvania is probably going to be the closest state in the election. It's been a reliably Democratic state for the last for I think decades at this point. I think Reagan or George H.W. Bush would be George H.W. Bush was the last Republican to carry the state of Pennsylvania until Donald Trump did in 2016. He won it by 0.72%. Joe Biden came back and won it by 1.2. Pennsylvania is going to be probably the biggest state to watch on election night, probably the closest state to watch on election night as well. If we look at the current polling averages right now in Pennsylvania, Donald Trump has a lead of 0.3%. Again, that just tells you how tight it is. I think when we did this last week, it was tied outright. On this day in 2016, Hillary Clinton was up by 8.2, lost by 0.7, an 8.9% shift towards President Trump. And then on this day in 2020, President Biden was up by 7 points, only won it by 1.2%. 5.8% shift gives us a shifted average of about 7.35. So factor all that in, you're getting about a 7.65% shift towards President Trump, or 7.5% 50% victory margin for President Trump, assuming a similar voting error. Again, I don't think it's going to be that much. That's the flaw with this is I think some of the numbers are a little bit extrapolated. I don't think it's going to be by that much. But President Trump is on pace to probably win by 1 to 3 percentage points in the state of Pennsylvania. Again, if we go into the demographic swingometer and we take a look, Pennsylvania especially is a big union vote, a big union state. If Donald Trump makes even just 2% inroads on the white non-college graduates, everything else staying the same, he wins. And then we can again assume the same trends. Again, that tilts it back towards Kamala Harris, 49.2 to 49. But then if Trump makes some inroads in Pittsburgh, in Philadelphia, even if he just wins 10% of the black vote in the state, he comes back, he wins the state. Again, it's going to be very, 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 very tight. It's going to be very, 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 very close. But again, polling trends and data would probably lead to suggest that President Trump will also win the state of Pennsylvania. And it's 19 electoral votes. So that wraps up the this section of this. Oh Lord, we're having problems with the map. That wraps up this section of poll closings. There we go. Oh, fix Texas. There we go. That wraps up this swath of poll closings. Moving on to the 8:30 p.m. poll closing. This is only one state, and it is the state of Arkansas. Arkansas, a historically Republican state, I don't think it has voted blue since Bill Clinton, and it's going to go for President Trump easily, just to show you and to keep with the current trend. President Trump won it by 27.6% in 2020, and he won it by 26.9%, so by roughly the same margins in 2016 and 2020 respectively. President Trump is going to be the clear winner in Arkansas when the polls close. Moving on to the 9 o'clock p.m. poll closings. That's going to be poll closings in the states of Arizona, the pivotal swing state of Arizona, the state of Colorado, the state of Iowa, the state of Louisiana, the state of Michigan Central Time Zone, the state of Minnesota, the state of Nebraska. Nebraska has its at-large and then its 3 congressional districts. The state of New Mexico, the state of New York, the state of North and South Dakota, that is their mountain time zone. Same with Texas with its mountain time zone. And then the states of Wisconsin and Wyoming. We can go ahead and call right off the bat the states of Louisiana and Wyoming and Iowa. Iowa used to be a pretty big swing state. We'll make this very brief. Iowa went for President Obama in both 2008 and 2012. President Trump won it by 9.4% in 2016 and by 8.2% in 2020. Iowa, those trends are going to continue. Current polling averages in my spreadsheet. Current polling averages in Iowa. President Trump's up by 4% right now with a shifted average of 13.5. Iowa's going to be likely Republican. President Trump will hold it, no sweat. He'll also win Nebraska's at large, and then Nebraska's 3rd and 1st congressional districts. The 2nd congressional district has shifted blue. It's Lincoln. It's the main metropolitan center of Nebraska, so it's going to go for Vice President Harris. In terms of Vice President Harris, she will win the state of New York. New York is interesting because if you look at 2020, President Biden now, he won it by 23.1%, and then in 2016, Hillary won it by 22.6%. It has been a reliably blue stronghold. Every Democratic candidate over the last couple of cycles. John Kerry was the last one to not win it by 20 plus points. Al Gore won it by 25. But if you look at the current polling averages right now coming out of the state of New York, and this supports the Trump making gains in the African American and Hispanic communities, the current polling average in New York only has Kamala Harris up 14.10. When you've had 21.3 and 23.10, you're looking at Kamala Harris running like almost half of what other Democrats have ran. Now, New York will still be a safe Democratic state, no question, but look for it to be in a smaller margin than normal, which will be very interesting. The state of New Mexico also will be another state that will be likely for Kamala Harris. It went for Joe Biden by 10.8 points in 2020, and went for Hillary Clinton by 8.2 percentage points in 2016. Current polling averages right now in New Mexico have Kamala Harris up by 8.10 points, but there has been an average shift of about 2.95, so roughly about a 5.5% shifted average guesstimation. But it'll be probably somewhere between that and eight. So it'll be likely for Kamala Harris. Same with the state of Colorado. It is the most Democratic shifting state. So much how Florida has shifted massively to the right, Colorado has done the exact opposite over the last couple of cycles. And that means that Colorado, if we look at the last couple of elections, if we go here, Colorado in 2016 went for Hillary Clinton by 4.9%, but then went for Joe Biden by 13.5% in 2020. If you look at our shifted averages and on this day averages, in Colorado, 1.7, but then a 0.7, only a 0.5 shift, for President Trump. Wouldn't be enough. Current projection is with the shifted average about 11.5 percentage points in Colorado. So it'll be safe to likely for Kamala Harris in Colorado. No issues there. Sterling, do you think Trump's gain in New York could help with the popular vote victory? Will Harris make up ground elsewhere, offset New York, lose the popular vote? I think Trump is making a run for the popular vote. I mean, Trump had a rally in Coachella over the weekend. He's looking to sell at Madison Square Garden in the last couple of weeks leading up to the election. I think Trump's making a run for the popular vote. I mean, we can look at my spreadsheet. On this day, this is the general election polling average, the national polling average. On this day in 2016, Hillary Clinton was up by 6.7, only won it by 2.10, so a 4.6 shift towards Trump. On this day in 2020, Biden was up by 9.2, only won it by 4.5, so another 4.7 shift. It looks at about a 4.65% shift in the popular vote. Now, Kamala is up right now by 2.2. Number one, that's the lowest a Democrat has ran against Trump in the general average. And if you factor in the shifted average, Trump wins the popular vote by 2.45%. That's not outside of the realm of possibility. We can actually go ahead and play with the demographic swingometer to see this. So if we go to the national level. So first of all, let's assume, as current polling would suggest, that President Trump wins probably like 13% of the black vote. Number one, that's absolutely that would be unprecedented for a Republican. And then let's assume that he wins, 40% of the Hispanic vote. And then let's assume as we keep expecting that he makes gains in the white college educated, and then Kamala makes some gains in white non-college educated. Popular vote would be close. I think Trump potentially would need a little bit more in the minority. If he wins 16% and wins 42% of Hispanics, which is not outside the realm of possibility, it would be close. I think it's possible. I think it would have to be some pretty big gains. I think Trump is making a play for the popular vote. But I think it's not outside the realm of possibility. I mean, even if Trump wins 66% of the white non-college educated, he wins 49 too in the popular vote. I don't think it's outside the realm of possibility for something like that to happen. Trump would have to make big gains in the white non-college grads and in African American and Hispanics, which I think he is on track to do. But I'm not gonna go as far yet to say that Trump wins the popular vote. I think it has the potential to be close. But I'm not going to make that prediction yet. Moving on next to the state of Minnesota, Governor Tim Walz' home state, Kamala Harris' running mate, has been... Oh, no, I hit the wrong button. No, go back. Oh, no, I lost my map. Oh, that's horrible. That's absolutely tragic. Okay, pause. Give me 1 second to rebuild the map. Or give me 1 second to rebuild the map. We're just going to go ahead and just go from where we are. So Minnesota, Governor Tim Walz' home state. He is doing a meh job so far. In 2016, Hillary Clinton won the state of Minnesota by 1.5%. And in 2020, Joe Biden won the state of Minnesota by 7.1 percentage points. So a big gain there. President Trump's team, I know that they were kind of pushing for Minnesota. They thought that they could win the state of Minnesota, but that unfortunately did not come to pass. Now, looking at the current polling averages in Minnesota, right now, Kamala Harris is only up by 4.7%, according to the Real Clear Politics polling average. On this day in 2016, Hillary Clinton was up by 6.2, only won it by 1.5, so a 4.7 shift. So would a popular vote victory require Trump to win all the swing states, you think? Yeah, I think yes, to a degree. Sterling, I think that it would definitely help. I think that a prerequisite for the popular vote would be winning all of the swing states. Although, I mean, Hillary Clinton didn't win all of the swing states in 2016, and she still won the popular vote. I mean, it would depend probably on how much inroads Trump can make, especially in New York and California. If Trump's able to make some pretty nice gains in New York and California, drop those margins down, especially in New York, into the mid to upper teens, I think that he wouldn't necessarily need it, but I think everything would help. I mean, if I'm Trump, I'm not going for winning the popular vote but losing the swing states. I mean, I think you got to push first for the swing states and get those wins, and then from there bank on being able to pull enough everywhere else to get the popular vote. Going back to Minnesota, a shifted average of about 2.5% to Trump, which would actually, with the current average, would put that at tilt D. I don't think that's necessarily fully accurate. I think it'll probably be closer to a lean. But Minnesota will be closer than it was in 2020, I think, for sure. I think the boost from Tim Walz won't necessarily help Kamala Harris, but it'll be interesting to see kind of overall what does end up happening. And yeah, so outside of that, the next state is the state of Wisconsin, the third and final state of the Rust Belt trio. Joe Biden did win Wisconsin by 0.63% in 2020, and Donald Trump did win the state of Wisconsin by 0.76. So it's been one of the closer states in the last couple of elections. Before this, it was historically Democrat. Looking at the current RCP polling average, Wisconsin, Kamala Harris is up by 0.3%. Compared to on this day in 2016 when Joe Biden was up by 6%. So a 6.7 shift towards President Trump. And then on this day in 2020 when Biden was up by 6.3, only won it by 7 or 0.7. And so a 2020 shift of 5.6, shifted average of 6.5. All of that puts Wisconsin with the shifted average in play at 5.85. I don't think that's fully accurate. I think, again, it's a little too generous straight off this data. It's going to be probably closer to 1 to 2 points for President Trump. I do think the data supports that President Trump will win the state of Wisconsin. So probably by a tilt margin, as with Michigan and Pennsylvania. So all three of the Rust Belt trio states will go for President Trump, as we're going to go ahead and sweep through. We've said all of these states we're going to go for Trump, just to fill in my map. That was going to be lean, Republican, 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 Democrat, Democrat. Doing this real quick just because it was going to bother me if I didn't do it. And the map deserves to be filled out fully. And then we said Texas, Oklahoma. We added Wyoming, Colorado, and New Mexico. Okay, so I think we are fully caught up to where we needed to be. So next, the final state in this batch is the state of Arizona. We're almost done. Thanks to you guys so much for hanging in there, hanging in with me, especially with my technical difficulties. But Moving on to the state of Arizona. Arizona is an interesting state because it has been a historically Republican state. And we have to go back to probably, 1996 with Bill Clinton was the last time before 2020 that Arizona flipped blue. Joe Biden did win Arizona by 0.31% in 2020. Donald Trump did win by 3.5% in 2016. So a big shift towards Joe Biden, big shift to the left between 2016 and 2020. Some of that was also Donald Trump. But looking at the current popular vote, or looking at the current averages, Donald Trump is up by 1.10% in the Real Clear Politics polling average. On this day in 2016, he was up by 0.7 of a point. And on this day in 2020, he was down by 3 points. So all of that factored in together. You're looking at a shifted average of about 2.75%, which tacked on top of the current average gives it a 3.85, makes it lean Republican. I think it'll be probably about 2 to 3% for Donald Trump in Arizona. Looking at the demographic swingometer, if we go to Arizona, the counties to watch are going to be Maricopa County, that's the Phoenix, that's the heart of, and Pinal County, Pima County. Those are going to be the states to watch kind of in this little group right here. Again, we're going to continue with our prediction that Trump makes some gains in non-college educated. That it's enough to give him the state. But then if we move, say Harris wins white college graduates by that. We'll say Trump makes a little bit of an inroad in African Americans in Arizona, but we're going to move Hispanics over. Say Trump wins 39%. That puts him up by a point, 48.3 to 49.3, and that's the thing that's going to be the thing to watch in the state of Arizona is the shift in Hispanic Latino vote, which I think will trend towards Trump, and I think that all signs point to President Trump by a 1 to 2 point margin. And it'll be lean Republican. And that actually, if you look, puts actually President Trump already at 289 electoral votes, more than the necessary 270 votes required to win the election. We're going to keep going, but at this point, this is my prediction. President Trump would, in fact, win the election at this point with all of these states. Sterling, do you think Trump or Harris will gain in the Maricopa County suburbs compared to 2020? I think so. Like I said, the college-educated vote's going to shift a little bit towards Harris. By how much, that remains to be seen. I also think that Trump will make a little bit of gains back in the vote that went for that flipped from Trump to Biden in 2020. I think there's going to be some people that have buyer's remorse that will come back and vote for President Trump, but how much will it offset? I don't know. In fact, it might split for all I know. I'm not 100% certain how the Maricopa County suburbs are going to shift. Moving on to our next poll closures. At the 10 o'clock Eastern poll closings, it is the states of, actually, let me do this real quick. Pushing all of the wrong buttons here, folks. Let me do this real quick. Poll closings. This is what happens when you accidentally close the map. Wow, things are not wanting to work right now. There we go. Sorry about that. So closing, we're going to add. So closing at 10 p.m. Eastern, we have the states of Idaho, the states of Montana, the state of Nevada, state of Oregon's Mountain Time Zone, and the state of Utah. So Utah, Idaho, and Montana are all going to go for President Trump. Pat on to that already electoral college win, and the state of Oregon will go for Kamala Harris. Moving on to the state of Nevada, it's the final true battleground state of this election cycle. It has voted blue since 2008. 2004 was the last election that it went red. In 2016, Hillary Clinton won it by 2.4%, and Joe Biden did win it by 2.4% as well. Looking at my spreadsheet, the current polling average in Nevada has Trump down by 0.2%. And if you look at current polling averages on this day in 2016, Hillary Clinton was only projected up by 1.5. So there was a 0.9% shift towards Hillary. But in 2020, Biden was up by 5.2 on this day, only went up by 2.4. So a 2.8 shift towards Trump gives Trump a 1.95% shift, which would actually put Trump up by 0.75%. Nevada is going to be close, but I kind of remain a little cautiously optimistic, again, with some of the policies that Trump is promising. If we go to the demographic swingometer, big thing we have to look at is that 42.8% of Nevada's vote is white non-college graduate. We assume a little bit of that shifts towards Trump. We assume a little bit of white college grads shifts towards Trump. And then we assume a little bit of movement in African Americans. But then we assume Clark County, which is where Las Vegas is going to be the big county to watch. But we also assume a little bit of a Hispanic shift towards Trump. If Trump makes a play, wins 40% of the Hispanic vote in Nevada, he wins the state. It's going to be close. Nevada would probably, along with Michigan, be the state that I'm most pessimistic about flipping. But the Rust Belt does vote together. And I right now might be a little optimistic, but I think Nevada does go President Trump's way. This would be the time to flip it, especially with how good the polls are looking for him right now. This would definitely be the election to do it. Coming up on our second to final set of poll closings, it is California, Idaho, and Oregon specific time zones, and the state of Washington. I'm not going to take up too much time on this. California, 54 electoral votes. That'll go for Kamala Harris, as will the state of Washington, because Kamala Harris, Democrats win that Pacific coast. And then the final set of poll closings is Alaska and Hawaii. That'll be at midnight Eastern. Alaska and Hawaii, 7 electoral votes. Alaska will go for Donald Trump, and Hawaii will go for Kamala Harris. So there you have it. That is the map 3 weeks out from Election Day. Donald Trump winning the Electoral College 312 to 226, flipping all of the states that he lost in 2016 in 2020 from 2016 plus Nevada. So he flips Arizona, Georgia, North Carolina, Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin, and also wins Nevada for the first time. Now, important things to take note of: this election is going to be super, 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 super tight. If the polls are any indication, it's going to be a nail-biter of an election. It's going to be insanely close, probably the closest one since 2000. But my key takeaways, again, remember, Trump's probably going to make some gains in non-college educated whites. Harris will make some gains in college-educated whites, but Trump's going to gain in minorities, so expect him to gain in Hispanics and African Americans. How much of that all offsets remains to be seen. Make sure you go vote. Make sure that you are aware and informed, and we'll be back next week with 2 weeks out from the election to see how things have changed. But I'll see you guys next week. Thanks so much for watching. Have a good night.